Yeah. Right. Skin. Okay. Good evening, everybody, again.
David Chairman.
Welcome to planning for May. We've got quite a bit on the agenda tonight, so we're going to get through as fast as we can. So if we start off, no members of the public here. We are live, though, so member people maybe watching in. First of all, apologies for absence. Paula.
Councillor Davis is attending meeting at the Pride annual meeting.
Thank you very much for that. Item 2, declarations of interest. Anybody have declarations of interest?
Just the ones that I want to comment on the planning application, just in case we ever have a meeting.
Yeah. So you will be talking on them, Robin, but you won't be.
Hopefully, you never know.
Yes, but you won't be voting. Item 3, minutes of the Monday, April 4th, 2022 Planning Committee meeting. May those be accepted as a true record.
Yes, Chairman.
Thanks everyone. Moving the page on to item 4, Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan, Buckinghamshire Local Plan. Any updates? Paul, perhaps.
So a couple of updates about some progress. So as you know, the neighbourhood plan work has been slightly hindered by a member of staff being off sick. So number of staff is due back in the office tomorrow. So that's not the end of the matter, but at least able to come back in the office for a period. So that's really good. And also, myself and the leader have spoken to a couple of relevant consultants one of whom you probably will need to work with at some point as well. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll talk through the plan with Sheena, we'll come up with a plan between the two of us, and then come back to you hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks for the plan to take things forward at pace.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slatchbury.
Just briefly, one thing we do need to do, I believe it didn't make the agenda this time, is the response to a written question about Buckinghamshire Plan, which will be on the agenda for the next meeting. So I won't go into that now. I think it's very important that we read that. And I think that it could probably be circulated to discuss it as well, because it's quite incendiary on what happens with the Buckinghamshire Plan. And I think it didn't make the agenda, so because I gave it in too late, it's my fault. So I was waiting for it to actually be approved within the minutes of Buckinghamshire Council, so until it was there, I couldn't actually do that. So that's one thing, and I think we did it. And another thing, when I could even mention it now, I think I mentioned it to do with the neighbourhood plan when I'm talking as Buckinghamshire Council, because I'll put it in context a bit later, which I want you to know after a meeting today.
Thank you. In fact, we have had notice today, very short notice, of the meeting of BV which is going to be on this Wednesday, and one of the agenda items is the Buckinghamshire Plan, so they'll be giving more details out about that. Catherine is certainly attending. I think, Anthony, you attending? No, so Catherine will be attending on half online, but we're giving 48 hours notice for the meeting.
I was going to attend, but not 48 hours notice.
Yeah, quite nonsensical. So Catherine will obviously report back to us with what goes on there.
I did see Councillor Lumunga at the weekend, who unfortunately is really still interested in all these things and was talking endlessly about it, which is encouraging, that even though he's not a councillor, he's still interested in these matters, which I found stimulating, and seemed to know what was going on, which was impressive.
Just one thing for committee members' information. There's been a major planning application made down at Tring in Hertfordshire, not that far from us. The 1,400 houses on Green Belt, which is to the east of Tring, it's between Tring and Tring Station. Just out of interest, my sister's been involved in it, it's on her patch. The 1,400 houses are going to have 45% affordable housing content. This is Decorum Borough Council, being the district council down there, which covers Tring, Burton, Sydenham, Hempstead. And their policy on their emerging plan will be 40% housing normally. and brownfield sites. Because this is a greenfield site, the developer is working with them, and they've acknowledged there is a 6,000 person waiting list for housing in Decorum. So 45% is what the developer themselves are going for. So this is something I'll be putting forward for our own plan as a possible. The interesting thing about this 1,400 house development, it will have a primary school, a secondary school, a community centre, a shop, lots of green areas, and just generally the whole thing will be geared up, towards looking after the people on site. The one thing that's missing is any hint of any medical provisions. That's a touch for
Just to respond to that, very interested and good to know that the authorities are making good decisions about housing need. Tomorrow morning, the Buckinghamshire Council will be considering a report and recommendations on how they take forward social housing. You recall that it was something we raised in the motion, and the report is going to go to council tomorrow. So how that report is agreed and becomes policy will define how they're going to address the thousands of people waiting for housing in Buckinghamshire. And it is huge numbers when you take the whole Buckinghamshire as one, and the fact that there's been very little social housing in some areas for a very, very long time in Buckinghamshire, and we'll all be one. So that's how it is. So that might be something that people want to pay interest to as it progresses.
So the bottom line is the new bulk has 25%. Right, thank you very much for that. North Bucks Parishes Planning Consortium, Councillor Ralph attended on our behalf, meeting on the 28th of April. It is there online. Anthony, if you'd like to add anything, people can ask questions and raise things.
Yes, I mean, when everyone writes a report, one hopes everybody's read it. But there were some particularly interesting things this time. First of all, the Mays Norton development, 170 houses, Walnut Farm, and the fact that Pat Hardcastle, as an individual, not as a member of the parish council, is taking the Buckinghamshire Council to judicial review, or is proposing to. He's got to raise quite a lot of money, about £40,000, give or take. But what came out from that meeting, which I thought was interesting to us, because we've come across these times when we want to do something, we're frightened to death, quite rightly, that we're going to get stuck with huge costs. If as an individual, which is why Pat's doing it, and we're talking about environmental matters, then the Aarhus Convention, which is an EU or at least a European convention, does limit quite strictly how much can be claimed by the winning side, around about £5,000. So that makes it worthwhile giving it a go, bearing in mind you've got to find, as Pat has, 40 grand to get into it. But I thought it gave us some potential comfort, and I wanted to report on that for our future interest, really, just in case. I also mentioned here about section 106, two things. First of all, there's been talk, and people have to confirm this for me, that whereas section 106 is designed for a development to mitigate ill effects and to provide a little bit of comfort to folk, particularly sports and that sort of thing, there appears to be a move by Buckinghamshire Council to put section 106 money into a generalised pot across the county and then spend it on what they feel is of best benefit to Buckinghamshire Council, which is quite likely to mean that the development that was hoping to get a new playground, whatever, ain't going to get one, because somewhere else they see the necessity of spending the money there. It needs further investigation, I appreciate, but I wanted to flag it up because it was mentioned quite clearly. On the other hand, it was very interesting. We talked about medical provision within section 106 and the dearth of them. And Roy van der Pol, who's the gentleman, sort of my opposite number, but in Winslow, and I'm sure most of you know the name, was very keen on this as well. We were talking about it, and one of the councillors, where's his name? I always forget it. It's Tim, I know. He passed details of a 5 or 6 year old planning job that he'd been involved with, where they had approached and understood much more clearly what the requirement is within section 106 for medical provision. And I put that in the appendix there for us to at least look at, and if necessary, we might dig around and do a bit more investigation, I thought.
Yeah.
But again, this is what came out of the PDC meeting. And let me see what else, what other little goodies have we got here? Yes, as I say, I'll put Tim's email and what have you. The Oxford Cambridge Art, just a total silence on that at the moment. That doesn't mean nothing's happening, I suspect, but it's all got a bit underground. So we just need to keep a weather eye on that. Where are we?
Yeah, 41.
Yeah, I was going to do that, Chair. I was going to say, how following the meeting, there was an article in the Milton Keynes Citizen which was passed round by the Secretary about a bypass proposal around Bletchley, all to do with Salton Chase and so on and so forth. Again, I thought it was something we should all keep a weather eye on, because it, as I always say, drop a pebble in a pond and out come the ripples, and we get hit with some of the ripples almost inevitably. But as the chair has rightly said, the other key thing is the 421 study. And it was brought up at the meeting that they are looking at creating the authorities, to look at a scheme to make some improvements. That's fine and dandy, but what do those improvements actually entail? And I felt that if I raised a red flag, then as soon as other people have got any information and can give us more information, we could start to fill things in. All in favour of road improvements, but one man's road improvement is another chap's lost verge, shall we say. So that was my report. There was other stuff as well. When the minutes came out, I mean, I could have written twice as much stuff, but that was the stuff I thought Buckingham would be interested in.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You will
Thank you.
recall, everybody, that when the East-West Expressway was cancelled, the Secretary of State did say that he would make sure there were improvements to the A421, acknowledging it as a major arterial route. So whether or not his idea at that time was that you connect Bottle Dump roundabout with the bottom of Tindrick bypass by a dual carriageway somehow or whatever. But thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's really helpful. Robin.
Yeah, firstly, thank you so much, Anthony, for attending the meeting. The piece on the medical contributions is immensely interesting, as Councillor Mark Cole and your good self have been saying, that we're lacking real contributions for such a substantive amount of time. It's interesting to see that laid out as it should be, and in a section 106 which it hasn't been, knowing that we've lost the section 106 to the contribution to the Lacell development period, which was the only one which went to the CCG. But on the other matter of the Cambridge Arc Salton Chase, what I can say to you is that I attended a meeting today, and that was to do with looking at the A421, and that it was agreed that the officers would be in touch with the town clerk, and I felt that was the better portal for you to hear the information yourself, to be involved in it. The town clerk would probably work with them on where the appropriate place for that meeting to take place and whatever, because it's obviously will include everyone. But we did discuss the it's really works in with the neighbourhood plan, the potential growth, not growth, the comments made in the study of another development which Councillor Anthony Rouse kindly give us, that it shows you the numbers which deliver uplift, which is a difficult number, but it does tell you the truth of how economics work, which is something we're going to have to talk about. But I think it's a really good piece. Milton Keynes issue of the bypass is Salton Chase and whatever I was, and Shenley. I spent a lot of time over there for various reasons. And you look at the development that's going out there; it's huge, and it's quite large, and you can see the contribution that's actually probably making to the finances of Milton Keynes Council, which is in Buckinghamshire, the ceremonial county of Buckinghamshire, which we have to keep reminders on people. It's still part of Buckinghamshire. So that shows you then, I think there's some lessons we can learn from how they approached that development and how that development produced contributions. Because now we have a unitary authority, still in its infancy. We need to be very sharp, and we need to make sure that anything they draft in the local plan, the neighbourhood plan, but it does rather suggest to me that there's a big case for the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan in all these discussions, because it needs to be something that we agree with the community and the councillors of how we proceed on this, and make sure we have the best information available. And Anthony's made a good stab at that. We're not telling us what we ought to do, we're giving us a clue what we ought to look at, which I think has been very clever in the way he's put that together. And I think I did ask before I left the meeting today whether I could inform you of the study for the A4 study, but I think it was agreed that it was possible, and I did talk to the town clerk as I left the meeting. We held it in Buckingham, which I thought was an appropriate place to hold it.
Thank you, Robin.
So that stuff will come through the town clerk to the chair of planning, and maybe that's the appropriate route rather than try to reconstitute the meeting that I've previously been in.
Yeah, just regarding section 106, Anthony raised, I'll just remind members that the National Planning Policy Framework Guidelines state quite clearly that section 106 agreements are agreements between the developer and the local planning authority about measures that the developments take to reduce their impact on the community. Yeah. Just worth always bearing that in mind. Anyone, other questions for Anthony on that? No, thank you very much. Next item, action reports. You've got the action reports in front of you. The trees items, the West End Farmer on the agenda tonight. We could just ask Paul, street lighting Tindrick Road, you sent a letter on the 27th of January regarding that. Have you had a response yet? No.
Look at Catherine in case I've forgotten something. No,
It's a letter that you, John and Robin formulated together. So no reply on that yet. And we were waiting confirmation of acceptance for calling online at Rumbold Lane. Anything on that, Catherine? No confirmation yet?
No.
Okay.
We probably won't get any decision until they're ready to go to the committee.
Okay.
Then they'll tell us whether we're offering or not.
Catherine?
It's been directly, really. So, to the best of my knowledge, they haven't given a final decision. Unless I've missed it, in which case I apologise. Read a lot these days on the 30-mile-an-hour limit on the Tindrick Road. I don't think we've had the final decision of the cabinet member who was left with the decision taken. That I've not been decision about it. I think it's Madam Mayor and councillors who were able, because it was in the day, attended the meeting with the cabinet member and the police and that some time ago, where we strongly put our position. Some of us quite strongly. I think we do need to see clarity about this, because I know that really ties in very much with the streetlight issue, in the sense that 40 limit anywhere, a 30 limit attracts streetlight, in 40 limit doesn't, and we need to see that findings. It was left with the officer to go away and come back. But now Constitution is so awful that I have to cherry pick where I ask questions or get other people to ask it for me. So I think we do need to follow it up through the chair and the clerk. I think it's about time we knew. It will define how children get down that road.
Any other questions on the action list? No, thank you. Action reports, item 6.1, town clerk to report on his meeting with Rebecca Hart on trees.
I had a meeting with Rebecca Hart on trees, who happens to be the responsible manager for both trees. So she oversees Neil's work and also for design code work. So she was very helpful, very constructive, and I think the best way to proceed is to have an informal meeting with her around the Republic, which she's very much up for. We're still trying to get a couple of dates, so hopefully I'll circulate those shortly to you all. But she was really positive on both counts. I think that would be a good meeting to cover both things, and absolutely understands where we're coming from on both those issues.
Rebecca Clark.
Hart.
So just to become great friends, you're off.
I'm developing a personal relationship onto you all.
No, thank you very much. That's really, really helpful. So, thank you for those. That reports. Item 7, we can move on to planning applications now. I've got that many tonight, but always interesting.
Point of order, Chair. Item 1 on the agenda does not reflect item 1 on the report.
Yeah, we're just going to come to that. Thank you. So, item 1 on the agenda, as Councillor Harvey quite rightly pointed out, has actually been withdrawn. 12 to 13 Market Hill. Do you want to raise this, Catherine?
Yes, this suddenly appeared in my intro, and we've done 2 applications for 12 to 13 Market Hill before. This one came in with a rather unusual wording, completely ignoring the fact that there's a second floor to be considered at 12 to 13. So I went back to the officer and said, is this right? Because they are mucking about with the first and second floors, not just the ground and first. And she said, oh, that one's been withdrawn. And I thought, well, it would have been nice to keep letting me know. So, but this did appear in the public notices in the advertising. Anything that's happening in the conservation area or to a listed building has to have a public notice. And I thought, if I didn't put it on the agenda, people who'd seen the public notice might wonder why. So I included it on the agenda and pointed out that it had been withdrawn, simply to say, yes, I knew about it, but we don't need to worry about it because it's been withdrawn.
Right, and then so what follows from that is that you'll notice on the planning app that the item 1 is in fact the River Bank House. We have run this past the clerk and he said as long as it's in the pack and it doesn't have to be necessarily itemised on the agenda. Is that
Yes, and the agenda does say to consider planning application.
Yeah. So is the committee happy that we go ahead and consider this application? Thank you for raising it, John. So this basically it's the block of flats behind Bank House, right opposite Catherine's office. Change of use to convert existing duplex apartment, which is a one up, one down, same apartment. So rather than have that as one dwelling, it's now going to become 2 separate flats, one on the first floor, the other on the second floor. They call it a change of use, which it obviously isn't because it's still going to be a dwelling. So we might like to draw attention of Buckinghamshire planning to that. Anyone have any comments on it? Buckingham Society, Carolyn?
We did have a comment or two to the effect that we have no real objection, but we do think that it's slightly contrary to, I think there is a condition, a policy in the VALP that suggests that mixed dwellings are preferable. And the fact that they're now all one bed doesn't make it a mixed block flats. And I think we did think it was rather a shame that a 2-bedroom flat was lost, but we have no real objection.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hardy.
Yeah, also no objections from me either. I think we need more 1-bed places for people who don't want 2 or 3 beds. And often we know that when they build the estates, they mostly install the 3 and 4 and 5 beds. So I think more 1-bed places is a good thing, but I take on board what Karen said.
Yes, all the 1-bed flats that come up through these applications that we look at, there's so little in the way of storage and additional space that it seems to me always that they're cramming living conditions into very unsuitable spaces, that they should be able to expand the 1-bed flat to at least provide a storage cupboard, which in this case they don't seem to be able to do. They've withdrawn a cupboard, in fact. And we also wondered whether, and I think Councillor Harvey's probably answered it, that there obviously is a demand for 1-bed flats, and I appreciate that, but could they have a little bit more living space?
So
It's all down to money,
Yeah.
of course, but it is ridiculous not to have some storage cupboard.
Councillor Tribe.
Yeah, I've got an objection to this. It's again creepage from their original proposal. It's in the town centre. It was providing mixed accommodation from small dwelling to something not so small. So they're gaining another occupant out of splitting these into 2. I don't think they should do it. They should stick with what they planned for. We agreed it. The higher powers agreed the mix. Yes, we may need more 1-bedroom, but there are people that may need, and we're only talking one of them here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the town centre.
Yeah.
Keep it as it is.
You're going to propose that?
Yes, I am.
Second.
Damn right I am.
Seconded by Councillor O'Donoghue. Thank you. That's a very good point, Carolyn. Thank you for raising that, but it does go against Alp's own declared mixed policy. So, anyone else have any feelings on it? In that case, we take a vote on that. Yeah. All those in favour
Of
your proposal? So, we have a count.
Yes, sorry, I apologize. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You count me?
I did, yes.
Against? 1 against, 1, 2 against. Abstentions? 1. Robin, I thought we weren't voting on these.
I abstain.
Oh, right, so you can count that. Yeah, that's your, that is your
If I'm
abstention,
abstaining,
okay.
letting you know that I'm abstaining.
So we're making the point then that we're objecting to this on
Yeah.
the ground.
It'd be easy if you just record us.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Right, item 2 is number 8, Sandhurst Drive, which is off Corcoran Road. It's a fairly crammed little estate there. Household application for proposed single-storey side extension. As Catherine's pointed out, it goes right up to the property boundary. There was an extension approved in 2000, but it wasn't carried out. The extensions applied for in 2021 and 2022, both of which were refused. They've come back now with this latest one. It's adding no more bedrooms, so there's no parking problem, but members might feel it's too cramped. Karen? No?
We actually didn't have any, it was so much better than the previous one that came in. We're rather inclined to say, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we did it.
Before you change your minds again.
At our briefing this afternoon, it was noticed it doesn't spoil the street scene because they've all been altered anyway. So is everyone happy with that? Councillor Tribe.
I don't have any objection to it, but I would like to know their detailed build, especially as they're going up to the boundary line, and whether there's any guttering or rain runoff into the other area, or whether they're going to come back from that.
Yeah, I'll let Catherine answer that.
It does not in fact go right up to the boundary except at eaves level. And the slope of the roof is such that the rain will stay on their side of the fence.
Yeah, which means then
Which
you
means
get,
there's like a finger width down between the boundary and it's going to be absolutely impossible to keep the weeds down in there.
exactly, which,
But given that, I mean, about half of the houses in Sandhurst Drive have had a side extension. So it is more or less a continuous run of brick all the way around it. So,
okay, so,
I mean, the two-storey one was huge and really did make an end, because it's the end of the drive as you look at the end, it really did make a solid block. But that was
almost wants an agreement with the next door, just say we'll put some lead flashing in there to keep it dry underneath almost and join it to the other place. But, okay, no objections from me then.
Councillor Harvey, and then Councillor Evans.
Just that we put a rider on saying, ask them to consider solar panels, ask them to consider grey water recycling, and ask them to remember about the Party Wall Act as well.
Thank you for that. We obviously should continue to press for that, but we have been told in the last week that we cannot ask for solar panels and electric charging points, grey water on existing buildings. We can on new buildings. I'll let Catherine explain that fully.
I have noticed that officers are now quoting the Party Wall Act in appropriate circumstances on decision boards. This particular thing being on the northern side of the main house and sandwiched between two houses, solar panels are probably not ideal. We did ask for electric charge. This will be on the next agenda because it's a decision we're not today. We did ask for electric charging points. Apparently, this is only written into bulk on new builds, not renovations or amended plans and what have you. We could go on asking because it is in the neighbourhood plan. I can quote the neighbourhood plan policies on appropriate developments. But the Party Wall Act does seem to be covered by officers on a basis without having to be voted.
John? Sorry.
Yeah, I think we can keep on asking, and then we don't have to go everything else.
Eventually, we'll put them down.
But with solar panel, it may be that the scaffolding they'll have to build the extension could just be extended a little bit and put them on the main roof. It just cuts costs. When they're already doing some building work, they could, adding solar panels would be less than it would otherwise cost them. That's the point of this.
Thank you. Lisa?
Thank you. I just wondered if the yellow notices had gone up, and so no neighbours have complained or anything.
No,
This usually in this.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, 19th of April,
Brilliant.
the notices were signed off, whether Catherine will say whether or not.
No, there is a date on it, so it did go up.
Did go up, fine.
So, thank you, Chairman. Thanks.
So everyone's okay with that one?
Yeah.
Thank you. Old friend here, number 2 Mallard Drive. This is a change of use of, they keep calling it redundant land,
Yeah.
but Buckinghamshire Planning call it amenity land in refusing this fence. They were given time to, they refused to have 6 months to take it down, but they've come back with a fresh application. As you can see from here, there has been one objection on the website asking for legal assurances. They call it an objection on the portal, but it's not, it's just somebody asking for legal assurance that the land will be maintained and they won't have our neighbours. The householder thinks that we're being very petty by asking for the fence to be moved back 2 metres back from the edge of the footpath. It's already 1.44. They're asking if this application is approved as the existing situation in order that they can feel safe in their dwelling without the risk of antisocial behaviour.
Roads around there, isn't there?
So basically, they've just come back appealing for us not to continue to object to it.
Just a point of information, Chair. I don't think we asked them to move it back. We asked them to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And they've obviously been in discussion with enforcement.
Oh, I understand, but I don't want us to be misrepresented.
Yeah, councillor Harvey?
I don't know what I was going to say now. Do they own the land? That
Yes,
is
they do.
done?
Yes.
They do own the land.
I have got a copy of the land registry transfer.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it refers to conditions in the pre-existing
Yeah.
land transfer involving boundaries treatments. And Councillor Stutchbury attempted to get hold of this via county council, and they say, well, it wasn't a transfer involving us, so we're not going to. But as it involves boundary treatments, I think that members can hardly make a reasonable response without knowing what the legal conditions are that the man signed up to when he transferred the land.
Yeah, there was when they built the estate, there was a covenant about leaving open spaces and empty land. It shouldn't be fenced in. We need to find out whether or not that continues. So, councillor Tran?
Yeah, so I think it all hinges around this covenant because you can purchase the land. That doesn't mean you can build on it. And also I know that they fenced it in because when they did their garage or extension, there then wasn't enough playing area for their children, so they wanted them to feel safe.
Rear extension that almost covered the whole rear of the house.
Well, I'm sorry.
And quite a lot of the garden, obviously.
That's, you know, you just don't fence something in because you've built something else and now you don't have space to play. So I don't like this. I think it ought to come down and being reinstated as it is. They can still own it. And it's still their land, but you know, people can't go on it legally, but it should be open to create that space.
Agreed.
So we know what grounds we're on. Probably the best thing is just to defer this until we've got further information on the conditions attached to this land.
I think we're going to have to buy a copy of the original deed
Which
ourselves.
would cost,
22.
oh, we look at the clerk.
Make it so.
It's early in the financial year, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got some
But there's provision for things like this, is it? You need to get
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
The committee, we've all agreed. Thank you very much. So we defer this one.
I'll need to have a budget.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going away at the moment, the fence, so it's been done. It's just really a question of getting it legally sorted out there. Thank you very much. That moves on neatly to Pillow Way, 26 Pillow Way, household application for single-storey row extension with Velux windows. This is on Les Hill. It's quite a large extension, which takes a lot of their garden. But as Catherine points out, have got greenway either side. And
They don't want to move on to that area then, just to create a bit of a play area then.
Lots
will
of
they?
art.
there'll be fencing in the greenway.
They're going to have to move the brick wall. That's a bit more difficult than the close fence.
Everyone happy with that?
We thought we thought this was overdeveloped. I must say. It is vast. I think Catherine worked out that it was 42% more than the current square meters of the building, and it just looks like a overdevelopment. Yes, but it's not even the way they're connecting the buildings. It doesn't really seem like a domestic house.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a conservatory type of building, isn't it? It's got Velux roofs and it's got glass sides or bifold walls.
Well, it reminded me of the next application at Home Store.
That was the butcher's business.
yeah. Two a sideline and sausages and so.
Brick wall
Yeah, but
with the doors in.
So they can
Yeah.
get from the garage to the house, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they can put their training gear in the garage.
so what the members feel, we've heard what Buckingham Society's view is. Is it overdevelopment? We'd like to see something scaled down. Or is that not a valid planning objection?
they've got, they have got a lot of space in the front of the house. And yes, they are filling in the back, which is reducing it severely. So from an overdevelopment, from a contained living area space at the back, I think it is overdevelopment. But if you look at the plot maybe as a whole, then it probably is acceptable. But and that's the problem with just looking at it on paper, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the plot as a whole is only really the back garden because all the front area is paved driveway.
Yes, but
I mean, the green L shape round it is public land.
That's what I was going to ask, who owns that land, because we could find the same issue. They build on it for play area for kids.
Well, I have to say, I've been up there, it was a sunny day, there were loads of kids playing on it.
Good.
But, you know, loads of them, and including ones zooming around on BMXs and stuff like that. And it's obviously a well-used piece, that strip of green. But their garden is, as I say, walled in.
I have no objection.
Is that the general feeling?
Yeah, it's a moot point, really.
Thank you for your comments, so
It's a
Karen.
moot point, I agree.
Right, we'll move on then.
sorry, what were we doing with that?
Okay. So,
Okay, well, I'll object to it then.
Objections, yeah.
Oh, yeah, me and Martin objection on overdevelopment.
Unless you want to make a proposal as development, general feeling seems to be it's not.
Well, I'm going for overdevelopment,
Me too.
whether anybody else would like to consider that. Because I think, I know we can't think about the future, but, you know, what would you use that for if you know, somebody else used it, bought it? I think it's just overdevelopment in that sort of housing stock which is there.
And I think, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of these, aren't we, in the years to come?
start moving, yeah.
Anthony?
A thought has just occurred to me that are there any restrictive covenants on later altogether about boundaries and what can be built and extended upon? Because a lot of these developments now do have restrictive covenants of some sort. It would be worth us.
Removal of permitted development rights.
Well, that's right, and so on.
They've actually got a waiver from the builders. But I think that's partly because it will still be under guarantee.
Oh, it hasn't been transferred fully then?
No, it's probably been transferred fully, but if they're going to actually build onto the existing building, they won't then be able to claim if they start getting cracking or something like that.
Sure.
They want
This
the
is
house
the
built.
NHBC guarantee, is it? Is that the coding?
Yeah.
All works must be compliant within the boundaries. No consent on works for third-party land. Works must not interfere with any rights or easements which might be enjoyed by adjoining owners. Quality workmanship. Yeah, I mean, basically, they're covering themselves against any claims due to. No, and it's only for external alteration.
So Martin, do you want to
Not seen one of those before.
propose overdevelopment, particular areas?
Yes, I would, Chair.
Right.
So I may.
And Councillor O'Donnell, who's seconding that? This is overdevelopment. Right, let's take a vote on that. All those who believe that. Overdevelopment. 2, 1, 2. Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, so that for abstentions. Councillor Stutchby.
2,
Right.
2.
2 abstentions. Right, so we have no objection to that then. Right, let's move on to number 5, which is 7 to 11 home stalls with Buckingham butchers, tidying up the whole front there, replacing what was the conservatory.
Got no problem with it, Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see, isn't it? The company like that is just confirming they're going to stay there and tidy everything up. Is everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Oh, maybe not. I couldn't work out where the conservatory is at covering 7 and 9 already.
In the skip.
It's in the skip. If you look at.
Or is it just 7? It does.
If you look at.
Yeah, I know it, and it's gone, but
Yes.
was it doing 2 units? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
But it was quite difficult. I actually went up there
Calm
on
down,
a Sunday,
calm down.
which is a mistake on an industrial estate, because they all park their vans up there. And I couldn't get an angle where I could get the whole frontage. So I got half the remaining plinth and the place where they've got some. I did my best. but
Yes, I'm okay with that, Chairman, because
I don't have fish eye.
it was already used, 2 units was used as 1. What I was worried about was that we were losing smaller units again, just like the 1 and 2 bedroom flats, because there are large units pre-made up on that industrial estate.
But
and
they've
what-
been occupying these 3 units for quite a long time now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're becoming more as a 1 now, that was all, but let it go, it's good.
I
You know.
think they probably want better shop premises, but
Yeah.
we don't get to see that.
Thank you. Now, the only one we haven't got a notice for that we know about tonight is 48 Highlands Road. This is a 1960s detached 3-bedroom house with an attached single garage. It's on the east side of Highlands Road, right by the rear entrance to the school. Householder application is for a 4th bedroom, which means that they would have to have 3 parking spaces under the current Buckinghamshire Council rules. It's very run down. The owner apparently has not been there for some time, under new ownership. So what do members think?
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Try.
I support what they're doing because at the moment it doesn't look very good. I would like to see some tree management take place there, and that may be removal. I would not like to see the front wall removed and a drop curb put in, simply because of the location close to the school and losing other parking spaces. And I also like to ensure that their building design guide did not use the footpath to the side to bring building items around to the back.
That's gonna make it.
Because that is a well-used school footpath there.
Perhaps they could have restricted hours for delivery.
Well, that can come in their building guide.
Could be included in the method statement for
Yeah.
the works.
Unfortunately, building people tend to start at that early hour when schools are coming in and finish about the time they finish as well. But it's not my problem.
Carolyn.
No, I was just going to say that with Maids Norton School, they've put in an extension recently, and there were restricted hours when they could deliver. And it was quite onerous on them. They had to deliver really before 8 o'clock.
So conditions can be attached.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. The dropped curb situation, I can't imagine they'd want to add another one, so there's already one there, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. They've already got one.
You've got to have 3 parking spaces.
Yeah, you can still go use the same drop curb though, can't you?
You could do, I suppose, yeah.
Not a lot of manoeuvring space in the front. They might want to take that front wall down.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
But then they'd have to extend the drop curb so that you could go straight in.
That's
I
fine.
think Martin's right.
Councillor Gately.
Thank you. Yeah, just on that point, talking of the street scene in Highlands Road, those houses have got those low walls, I think, all the way down. And when, I know that somebody who I think a car hit their wall and they rebuilt it. And I think it would be a shame if that wall were removed. But if I were having to park a car behind the wall and I don't think I could do it with my driving skills. If I had to do, at any point I had to drive backwards.
It's quite reasonable for us to say that we want the wall retained to preserve the seat.
Yeah.
But that will make it very difficult to get the requisite three spaces.
Because that garage is just not of the right size for what we've got.
No.
Maybe it was built in the early 60s, I wouldn't.
Austin 70, yeah.
But it probably does count towards the
Yeah,
three,
exactly.
doesn't it?
So they only need two
Yeah,
outside
that might
parking
not be that
spaces.
difficult.
So are members then minded to okay it with the provision that the wall is
And delivery
retained?
times.
Yes,
Preserve the streets.
And the methodology statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Martin. Excellent. And again, neighbours may not be aware of it yet, so give the note of the situation.
Oh, yes, they will. The gentleman from across the road and approached me to find out what I was doing, will have told.
Oh, right.
He's in the bungalow. Do you remember we had that humongous extension?
Yes.
At the top end of Highlands? Well, that's on the other side of his hedge, and he was quite pleased to find it to be reduced.
All right.
Nice.
There's a lot of neighbourhood snooping up that end of the.
They could watch, Chairman, they could watch.
Right, amended plans. This is number 7. This is land off London Road, which is Lace Hill Health Centre. You will recall that Planning Commission was due to run out on December the 24th, 21, and so they got the outline landscaping permission in quick so they could extend the period. This is now an amendment on that. We raised concern, thanks largely to Buckingham Society, about poisonous plants being planned and many things like that. Buckinghamshire Council ecologist wants a plan to ensure the retention of hedgerows and boundaries, and they won't give approval until they have that plan. We've also asked about disabled parking and mother and child parking. We are not in a position apparently to ask for mother and child parking. We can do it in supermarkets or on private land, but certainly they're taking on board the disabled parking, which is obviously essential with at a medical centre. Obviously this is very much long term at the moment because we're all well aware of the situation, financial situation. They're just keeping it ticking over and
Yeah, it's fine.
so I'm happy with that response.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We've got 2 tree applications, both of which Catherine circulated everyone. And
Can I just have that emphasised that we are going for no objections because we have deferred last time pending the information. So it's actually a change of
on the health centre.
response.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
we are going
Change
for no
of response. Okay. The two trees were agreed by email. The problem. Item 8, planning decisions. The first one is Oddfellows Hall, which I, for one, am going to speak very strongly about it being approved, which I find quite extraordinary. Buckingham Town Council is very strongly opposed to the repositioning of these roof lights. Councillor Warren White asked several times for it to be called in. It was approved without even an officer's report. It's just approved like that. Heritage said, oh, being lower down, these windows may be visually more discreet. Now, the perverse thing is that the ground floor glass has got to be obscured, but the roof lights have not. They've only got to have non-reflective glass. And these look straight into at least one resident's bedroom, as we know. A number of residents have been against that. All those objections have disappeared from the portal because this is what Buckinghamshire Council do. Once they approve something or refuse it, they clear the decks. I was talking to Warren about it. We both agreed there's been a car crash of a planning application. An executive decision, again, once taken without consideration being given to us or Shire Council or councillors adverse comments. And again, the really worrying thing is no officer's report, as we said, and it goes against the Shire Council's avowed intent to increase involvement in town and parishes in planning matters. And I really, as chairman of planning, I feel very, very strongly that this goes against everything that we were promised. Karen.
What can one do? Is there any recourse that we can take to reverse the decision? No.
Secretary of State.
We can certainly record our concerns to Steve Bambrick, who's the director of
Business
director of planning,
Yeah.
who's the one who signed this off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just say we're very concerned that, you know, all our objections, both the town council and our ward council, have been completely ignored in this. And, you know, there's a history of abuse of the planning regulations, building regulations. This has all come up as retrospective after enforcement investigated, and it's still going on. It's not finished by any means. And I feel we've let down all the residents around there.
Definitely.
So is the committee
Absolutely.
happy for us to do that?
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you very much. The good news, of course, is the rest of the applications, all those that we opposed, 5 of them have been refused and 1 of them withdrawn. So that's been something of a result to make up for that.
And I went out, where our comment was taken on board and they did put a sign.
Thank you. Buckinghamshire Council Matters, to receive news of Buckinghamshire Council, new documents and other information from Buckinghamshire Council members present. Councillor Stratford, the floor is yours.
Yeah, firstly, I've been in conversations over the section 106 Osier Way. What I've left it with them that my discontent continues. My concern is that it would seem that the position of the developer is rigidly, let's say, not wishing to enter into discussions. I've had discussions about the purpose of that, and what would be the outcome. Now, what I have had correspondence that the officer, after what was a very sociable meeting, actually, though it didn't sound like them being sociable, about go back and ask again about the involvement, or that there would be a discussion with the town clerk, town council. So I'm fighting that case. I'm also aware that they're putting together the scope of the section 106, which is the scope of where the monies will be portioned, and that we need to, though they're not actually in a public format yet, there are discussions going on. I saw that, but I can't really say how it was, only that it looked better than I thought it would be. Though I still are very much concerned about, if you remember, I gave you minutes of a meeting where I attended them, and that they were wishing to the Osier Way thing. Well, fortunately, it will be broader than Osier, than Eccleston Way for a contribution. I also premised my comments in that meeting to do with the fact that, which I just now said earlier about the A421 study, and that it seems absolutely ridiculous to negotiate something with the knowledge that there was a study coming forward, which, if that study found something negative, let's say, with some created issue, that it made it more difficult to get to school for the children, that would be horrendous. That meeting this afternoon, when I pushed those points, there was some, let's say, irritation in some quarters. And I put my point at that. That will come back to council. On the other matters, tomorrow I will be questioning the cabinet member about the housing strategy, the the affordable housing policy in a limited way that I can do, because I can't actually strain to the paperwork, but I can ask a question around the paperwork along the lines of does it really recognise the motion which one person took to council in December the 9th, 2020 to actually put this in place. I have some ownership over the fact that this policy is coming from council, and what comes out of it will be determined. There's also a second question going to council tomorrow. It's about the housing need. I think Bucks published their housing need assessment. I don't know whether that was public or whether that was internal, but it's referred to in the question at council from my colleague Alison Wilson, who's she's asking about do those figures make sense and are they the real figures? There is some concern that there's almost 3 sets of figures going around for what housing is. One for the council tax base, perhaps, one for the amount of constituents in the area, and one is what the housing needs. None of the figures that they got, it's been alluded to in many meetings, actually correlates and make sense. But I expect there'll be one, having many years ago dealt with, I remember Councillor Strain Clark took them and proved them mathematically wrong once. And they said, well, when we come back, we'll have the right figures that match the information that we just said. So that will go on. And also, I've just drifted to say for time, I've drifted to the archaeological piece, which is the next item on the agenda. I'll see if that comes up again.
Yeah, that comes up.
If I do it now, so that we go, if that's okay, the chairman. What I have been told is that they are in conversation, finally, the two parties being Brower Homes and Network Archaeology. What the aspiration is now that they will come to a long-awaited legal settlement. So the post-excavation assessments, well, what the post-excavation assessments is that obviously we'll get some data on the age of the bodies and some their mortality situation, so that we, as I think it's been nearly 3.5 years now, where we first raised this, and that they have been pushing very hard with it, but of course, you know that the developer pulled away, and we all know that information. So we are moving it forward, and I'm assured by the officer, who has been, to be fair to her, monitoring this all along, that she's going to continue monitoring. I did email her again, asking if there was a further update, but clearly on a Monday, getting an email from me on a Monday morning probably wasn't the best time, but it was in my head, so it happened. And but it's actually a long-term thing. So I think I can say that thankfully through the support of the members here and my lobbying, that we've actually now got it moving forward. That doesn't mean we've resolved the issue, it doesn't mean that we've got the archaeological information. What it does mean is, like, we're now at the start of the point where we might actually get that information, which we can then define Buckingham's history, which would be something tremendous. You'll know when you get the information goes public, because somebody else will claim that they did all their hard work. So we'll know when it comes out, and we'll have a press release. So that's where we are with it. And needless to say, I will be hoping that the elements I mentioned earlier, not going into again, to do with the questions at council. I think we discussed those at a later meeting, and it's been 3 meetings tonight, so I think that will be enough.
Thank you very much, Robin. So, anyone have any questions, Robin? No, we can move on then to item 9.2, updated list of undecided opposing call-in applications to hold over from the June 6th meeting. Yes, those are for note to be noted. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Catherine. Item 10, Buckinghamshire Council Committee meetings. The May 4th North Bucks Area Committee was cancelled, and the 3 strategic site committees, 2 in April, 1 in May, no Buckingham applications on those. One's actually upcoming, isn't it, 12th of May, but
No, there isn't anything.
yeah, on that one as well. Right. Item 11, it was agreed at the Environment Committee meeting that planning members should discuss the suggestion that consideration of noise and air pollution be included along other side environmental questions and developments are put before the planning committee. Thank you. Robin, you're.
Yeah, well, firstly, I've been doing some serious questioning of this on behalf of the constituent, didn't seem to be real. My question of this was produced data, didn't seem to factor in discussions at the committee, rather were disregarded in the sense that it was something that actually provided raw data about the fact that some of this hasn't actually been done since 2019. Now, there might be an explanation for that, a year running into COVID and whatever, so there isn't any true data. I think that should be circulated to the committee. The other fact is that the only place they've done any testing is been in Buckingham East, the town centre, and such. There's been no substantive testing for a very, very long time on the A421. There's no toxic levels, I can't think what the nitrate levels been recorded on there. I think that it would be reasonable for us to establish, based on the correspondence I provided, that I can go back and ask the questions myself, but I'd rather hoping that I'd do it in conjunction with people. Because I think that it's clear that the amount of transport going up that road is roughly in 2016, 26,000 here, 22,000 on one road coming in, 22,000 coming in off the A41, A421 and A422, plus the traffic coming in off the Audi road, all trucking along the A421. Those figures I gave to a meeting today to the officer who was mildly interested in it, to be honest. I think it's absolutely important that we actually get some levels of pollution on that road, especially if, as we now know, there's likely to be some proposals for changes. Now, whatever those changes are, and whatever comes forward out of those proposals and discussions, we have to consider that all information says that people's lifespans affected by pollutants, and we can have as many electric vehicles as you like in the short term, but that's an economic question. So I think we do need to push the council for a recording of the level on the A421 and to actually where the accommodation is and people live. Probably my view would be you need to do one on the side of the Tesco's roundabout and one going up to Embleton Way where you've got the feed out there, because you'll get two different sorts of figures, one before the A413 comes into the traffic and one when you've got the two other traffics. Now the Linden Village thing, you can say we should do it there as well, but we've just got one field of traffic there. It multiplies 3 times. And if it's the 3 amounts of journeys coming backwards and forwards, when you get to Linden Village, you've only got the one lot of traffic going through and whatever. So I think that we either do it on the 3 places or 2. But at the moment, they don't know what it is and they haven't done what it is. And there is a legal obligation on them as an authority to actually do this work. And they haven't actually done it for a very, very long time. They do like to quote figures, the ambient figures of the A421, which probably includes somewhere out near Wadston or something. And which, quite frankly, Buckingham's got so many people living there, especially the horrendous decision to stick another 420 houses next door to the road, with residents living there in a sort of canopy of road. So I hope that we propose that we actually use that correspondence, circulate it more widely in the Environment Committee, and use the facts in it and write very strongly to them, saying this is your responsibility. You may say you haven't got time, but we believe it's long overdue.
Anton's waiting to ask you a question, but just first, Robin, can I just ask you, that's not quite how I read this. How I read this was that you want us to put consideration of noise and air pollution alongside other environmental questions when we're considering development. So are you suggesting we have to pay for this?
I'm suggesting that we could put it in every application, but it isn't something that we can do. What we do need to establish is what the pollution levels are. Because then what we can say is that when an application comes in, we know that the pollution levels say 6. That application is going to add additional 1. That means it will be 7. And that they have to put mitigations in there. The question will come back to as well, there is no figures, up-to-date figures, and why you asking us to put it in there. So I think we need a baseline before we ask the question. It got very heated and more complicated than it needed to be honest, at the Environment Committee. But I think that's how I would do it, and I think that we need to get that information sharpish, or at least the reason why they won't fund it. But they are the statutory body with the responsibilities for monitoring this stuff. It says it all in the email correspondence.
Thank you for that. Anthony.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I think this question arose about pollution, and pretty quickly there was, in addition, was noise and also particulates. So several aspects to it. And as somewhere like the 421 going past Osie Way, as will be, and St Rumbold's Fields, there's a good chance that there will be some pollution which could affect those sorts of sites. In other words, we've urbanised a stretch of road. And yes, Councillor White was kind enough to point out that there will be quite broad verges and what have you to mitigate it and keep people well away right from the roadside. I'll come back to that in a moment. But of course, that's only part of the story, because you put a load of houses up and then you've got more cars. And where do they go? They come straight onto areas like the 421. So you've got both sides of the picture. And as far as the verges and things are concerned, excellent idea, until somebody comes along with some bright idea about improving the 421 and says, I think we'll do a dual carriageway here. Oh, look, there's some verges, we'll have those. And suddenly you've got dual carriageway and no verges. Now, that's all supposition and so on. So all I was really hoping we could do is, when we're considering applications in future for developments, we make sure that we look at the pollution aspects of roads that would affect that development when we look at it. Same way as we've added grey water and electric points and that sort of thing. It's a consideration. It's not an absolute, it's a consideration.
But it couldn't be a reason for refusing a housing development, could it? Because it's going to increase the pollution.
I suspect we could try that, but I suspect it would be a very steep uphill climb. But nevertheless, it's a consideration, and it shows that, if nothing else, we are aware of contemporary issues as grey water and electric points and so on and so forth. In other words, I'm suggesting that as a town council planning gang, we remain relevant and on the front foot.
Thank you. Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously I share concerns about pollution wherever it may be, but even if you chose the most appropriate site to build X number of houses in our area, though there's still going to be the same proportion of cars from those houses, which will feed into the roads.
Yes.
So wherever you put them, that's going to happen. Even the best planned development is going to lead to more cars on the roads and therefore more pollution in the air.
If I can maybe stop, please. I don't disagree with you, but nevertheless, there are mitigations for noise and for pollution that can be introduced. I mean, for example, HS2, there are mitigations for noise, for example, by putting berms in and that sort of thing. What we should be considering is perhaps there should be some mitigating factors. If nothing else, perhaps even a fence. You do see these on the side of motorways where there's quite close development. It's that sort of thing. Yeah. At least we're all aware of it. That's the first step. If if we're not even aware of it, then I believe we're remiss. But I'm with you, I understand what you're saying.
Councillor Bobby? Yeah, just to back up what Anthony's saying, this item is all about us being more aware as a planning committee that when big applications come in, not the little ones that we mostly been dealing with tonight, I mean, to think of ways in which the impact on the particulates and the noise can be mitigated. That's what this item is actually all about.
Yes.
It's for the environment committee to sort out where things get monitored. That's not our job as a planning committee to do that, because we're then clearly overlapping with the environment committee, and that doesn't make any sense. But there are issues about plume. So when there's the gap between where the particulates are coming out of the exhaust pipes on the various lorries and cars, instead a question of how close the nearby housing will be, because what we're talking here is about children and other young people being affected by this because they're playing in their back garden right next to a very fumy, horrible road. And what we're saying, I think the implication is that when we're arguing for or against new developments, there should be an adequate gap, which should be researched and found out what that gap is, to at least try and mitigate the impact of the inevitable pollution, which we're going to have for some while again. That's what the item's about, and that's what we should be agreeing to do as a planning committee, I believe.
Councillor Marvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I totally agree with what you're saying about pollution, but aren't we slowly moving away from the combustion engine to a more electric powered vehicles or hybrids? So the pollution in the next, say, 5-10 years should come down, because that is the aim of the government, to stop building cars by 2030, internal combustion engines. So yes, the pollution will come down. I know it's not going to be a quick fix, but it's a long term.
Councillor Sushby.
Yeah, I take it nobody's interested in doing the studies I've done for South. I'll pursue that. I mentioned it in 2 committee meetings, asking whether we can have some support for getting what the toxic levels. I mentioned the Environment Committee didn't really feel like that, so I'll do that myself. The other point, Can
I just clarify something? The Environment Committee did agree to write to Buckinghamshire Council to ask us to do that.
did they?
Yeah.
And has it gone? Has it gone? Almost. Okay, almost gone.
Yeah.
So it's going to be done.
Yeah.
Okay, I take your influence. Thank you very much. I didn't take the influence that I was getting, the information that was provided was irrelevant. The reason I say that is because, you've got the figures here for West Street, it's got the figures here for the pollution figures. Now, when we come to future development, you've got to consider that the town centre now is changing the way it is. You look at the amount of people. I sat there today at one of the cafes in the town centre and having a coffee, and you're sat in the traffic. I can't complain about the smoke coming from the cars, quite frankly, that'd be hypocritical. But other people have the right to complain about that. So it's how the ambience of this thing. If you read the other day, the mine where they're actually getting lots of these stuff out for going forward for getting the electric cars, it's not quite as safe as you think it is. Loads of people lost their lives in Africa the other day trying to get this stuff out of the ground to actually make batteries and make zinc, I think it was a zinc mine. So, the whole thing around that we have to think that, what we're getting, there's people losing their lives in Africa in it. So I do think that Andy's absolutely right, it's going to improve going forward. But I still do think that when it comes to new development, how do we define how we can put levels of pollution? The one thing we can do.
Point of order, Chair. Can I not dealt with this already? Can we not move the next?
Can I carry on talking, John?
No, but you're off the point, Robert.
Well, if you let me come back, John, you'll explain.
I'll be on the point there to what is actually.
But if it's uncomfortable for you, John, just don't listen. The fact is, there are things you can do, which is from the 1971 Highway Act. Now we have to be minded to what the 1971 Highway Act says, and that deals with housing developments, noise and pollution. and I know you've got your hands in your head, John, but it's actually a legal document, so you can read it. It actually states in that, and if you remember, when we had the problem with the Tesco's roundabout, we had to fight very hard to actually get mitigations put in for noise and pollution. So I think maybe when we come to a planning application, though the planting and screening is going to be key in actually mitigating it in the short to the long term, and we just need to focus on which parts of the law we can actually.
So everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Excellent. Enforcement, anyone got any new breaches to report? You've probably all noticed that what was Roosters,
Kebab shop.
by the Bull Ring, has become another kebab shop with very garish colours. We are going to check tonight on the way home if the hanging sign is internally illuminated
I
or not.
don't think it is, it's got an odd, not exactly strip light, not exactly LED strip.
Yeah,
And so has Prager's.
yeah, it's the same. Yeah. So Roosters anyway had these downlights, didn't it, under the guttering. So.
Yeah.
But Carolyn noticed it as well, and I sent photographs.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Robin?
I reported one today, and the manhole cover outside secondary school, got phoned up by the gentleman saying he couldn't sleep at night. That's still loose, and we've got lots of those type of enforcement issues on the wires and stuff to do with planning notices and stuff. Signage on the bypass, it never seems to disappear.
Yeah, that's under matters to report, Robin, not enforcement. So we'll come back to you on that. So apart from the kebab shop, no other breaches.
Yes, there's one I've got to look at. The old British Heart Foundation shop that's turned into a bar.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. Yes, another Barbers.
Another Barbers.
Oh, yes, it's a Greek one. It's the same chap who owns the one down.
I wondered if it was the
The same chap, yeah. He's got quite a few, quite a rich chap, yeah. Rich Turkish chap, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So I gather it's a very enriching experience.
So that's a change of use, of course.
Hot towels, that kind of.
Yeah.
The hot towels, yeah.
Singeing your ear.
The singeing ears, yeah.
Do you not need that, Catherine?
Thank you very much, John. Okay, right, so this is item 12.2, information on senior enforcement officers. This is about 28 Border Lane, which is the Lace Hill end of the Bletchley Road roundabout end, where you go through the bridleway and the gates, which are well known to Carolyn with her own crossing with lights. Retention of fencing and change of use. We raised this because we felt there'd been a land grab here by the property owners. There is some doubt about the actual how much it might have encroached, and enforcement looked at possible legal action, decided against it, but they will continue to leave the planning enforcement case open, which is the erection of a 2.5 metre high fence around the property. It really is overbearing.
It's the height, I think that was the issue.
And again, I provided pictures to Catherine a week ago, which she sent on, I think, and, so that is ongoing. So that may well come back to us as an enforcement matter. Robin?
Yeah, I corresponded on that today, and it's very much as the chairman says, but it appears that they differentiate themselves to do with the land issues and the enforcement issues, and it appears that they have allotted
Oh, yes, quantities.
Quantities in arrears, and what happens is everyone remembers Cobbler's Cottage. 10 years it went on, and in the end it got granted permission through lack of
action.
for lack of action. So we don't really, there has been bad precedents.
I think part of the problem is that when the county council was formed, something years ago, they had to take on things like private paths and public paths and what have you, but there were no maps. There were no maps showing limits or where the thing actually was. Legal are not going to take action on anything that they can't prove they own, because they get their knickers in twisted, they look like having to spend money on something. So they say, well, we can't prove we own it, we can't prove we don't, but we're not going to take the risk. But certainly the fence is an issue, and there is a proper design for they still, which he has contravened, so Miles will be on that.
Yeah.
It was Miles on that drive as well for them, so.
But we will keep on top of that one. The other enforcing case, 1 Manor Street, where they've replaced the timber stable door, PVC door, that's been resolved. They've been given 4 months to put the original door back as it was. Thank you. Item 13, Royal Mail Post Box provision for St Rumbold's Fields. Catherine has done a report there. It seems very perverse. It's got a estate of almost 400 houses with not a post box on it.
Well, I think we ought to do a press release to shame the post office into doing it. I mean, they are a Royal Mail, the clue's in the name, and the idea that people there might have got to walk all the way down to the neighbouring estate with no street lights and no necessary speed limit is perverse. I think we should do a press release asking them, is the Royal Mail now pulling back from supplying inequality to people? Because there's people on that estate that are going to be elderly, there's going to be people who've got disabilities, there's going to be people who've got visual issues, and they need a post box. Yes, not everyone's going to be on the computer. People still need to do post. So it appears that they're quite willing to deliver, but they're not willing to receive. And if you try to post a parcel in Buckingham, or even pick up a parcel after it's been delivered, you've got to be down there by 10 o'clock in the morning, because they don't only open till 10 o'clock in the morning, so you can get your parcels there. It doesn't get done at the other post office, or you've got to go into our post office, which now has turned into a confectionery store, which I wonder which in itself is
not confectionery.
Well, anyway, cards and whatever, clutter. Stationery, that's it. Well, you couldn't get I couldn't have got my late wife around there with a wheelchair to get in there. But beside the point, people do need a post box. So I think we should do a press release asking the Royal Mail to reconsider their proposal that they don't need a post box, because they'll set a precedent that they don't think that people need to post letters to them anymore. And how are we going to send all those Christmas cards? And that we all diligently write, and how are we going to write those letters of thanks to the post office when they've actually done it, if we haven't got a post box?
And of course, if they're doing it on this estate, imagine what might happen. They might remove those away. They say, no, we're not going to provide on there. So you're going to have to cross the bypass to post.
Yes, we'll have to use Templeton Way.
Yeah. Councillor Harvey, John.
Yeah, I'd agree with Robin. I think a press release on this would be a good thing to do. This has been an ongoing project between Catherine and I over the last few weeks really since I had a conversation with someone on the estate. And I commend your map. Catherine is very good and very explicit and surprising where the various post boxes are. But yeah, I think if they take it literally, then there is at least 1 or 2 post boxes within the half a mile, but it's not at all. Because as the crow flies, clearly it's stupid. We're going to go around various bits, and as Robert
You
points
need to
out,
go to the
towards
Vale of
access.
Aylesbury one, you've got to cross the Tidbrook Road twice.
Yeah, it's just utterly inaccessible.
And walk
So
down ways.
I think we should expose this as being ridiculous and at least be on the side of the people of the new estate, that they should have a post box, and equally Rosy Way and everywhere else. Absolutely.
Councillor Try.
I think it's very commendable that we want a post box there, but in this day and age, I don't think you can have everything everywhere. They are cutting back, and I think we ought to have a conversation with the Royal Mail with our other thoughts about, as you said, Osier Way, because if they wanted to put one in and they didn't want to put it here, then we ought to maybe advise them that although they would have to cross the road, you know, the other side would maybe match the 2 of them, rather than putting it on the Park Lane side of things.
Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to remember when we had the COVID tests, we were all heavily reliant on post boxes to get our tests back. Priority mail.
Yeah, true.
Carolyn, Buckingham Society.
Oh, we fully support the campaign for a post box in every estate. Because historically, you had one on every street, actually. It's absolute nonsense that a 400 house development should not have a post box. Quite absurd. And I'm just writing little notes myself. I think we should write a letter. Although I think writing letters to the paper, even though I don't have a post box, might not actually
Robin,
achieve
you've
a
already
lot.
spoken on it. There's something.
Yeah, I just wish to disagree with the principle that you can't have everything. This isn't having everything, it's having equality. If you take that analogy, what you actually say every time somebody needs a house or needs something, you can't have it because you can't have everything. If you don't have a post box and you can't post anything and you haven't got any money, how are you going to communicate to get things you need? There's going to be quite a lot of social housing on there. Not all those people are going to afford to have a laptop or a computer, whatever. They may have to write to their local authority or get the likes of us to do it for them. And they need a post box there, because if it sets a precedent, they don't have one there. And then, you know, unless you're going to donate one from Page Hill where you've got a post box to them because you don't think you need it, in which case I'll help you come and take it along there. But if you mandatory said you don't need a post box, we'll take it from Page Hill and take it to the new state.
You've got 2 on matches, you can do that one.
I didn't say I didn't need one. It's Councillor Tribe decided he doesn't need a post box, so in which case we could take it from Page Hill and see how your constituents up there think when you said that they would lose. But this is new constituents, we should help them, we should welcome them in the community, and this is a good initiative to actually raise it, and pouring oil on it isn't what we should do.
Councillor Harvey has suggested we do a press release on that.
Well, I did.
Well, you didn't
Yeah,
vote to you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just to try and shade them to win. And, everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
formulate that on the lines of Catherine's report. Thank you very much for that, Catherine.
No, I'm not happy with it. Just so it's noted.
You want to make a vote?
Yeah, so
No,
I-
it's for a vote,
I-
I'm just not happy with
recorded vote.
Yeah,
I want a recorded vote that we want the post box, I think on that basis.
Okay, then,
I agree.
there's a recorded postal vote.
Oh, now you put your hand up, that's a recorded vote.
Yeah, a recorded vote.
So, who's asking for a report?
I am.
Right. A second for a report.
Yeah, of course.
Right, okay, all those in
Yeah,
favour,
the second.
do you make a press release demanding that there be a post box
Exposing the fact.
on Rumbold's Way? All those in favour?
In favour, councillors Cole, Stutchbury, Mahi, Ralph, Harvey, Gately and O'Donoghue.
Against?
Have a try.
Abstentions?
None.
Thank you.
They'll now put a pillar box in, put a stake beside it.
We're going to name it.
To it before they set
We're going to
fire.
call it the tri-pillar box.
You're off my Christmas file list.
Application, sorry,
Is that all I had to do?
Yeah, on the issue of post boxes, I have noticed that they've had put stickers on some of
They
the
changed times.
post boxes. The one on Gifford Place in Page Hill, there's one in Maids Morton.
No,
They're
one in-
probably on most of them.
Yes.
They're
Where is he?
they're having the last collection at 9 a.m. I think, on nearly all of the post boxes. It might not be absolutely all of them,
On a
but I've
s-
seen it on
On
several.
a Saturday and a
post boxes.
Sunday. They're changing the times by taking it back an hour in the afternoon, in the evening. Sort of 5:45 is going to be 4:45.
all right. So,
Oh, right.
They
I
haven't
thought
got
it was
any
9 a.m.
staff.
in some of them.
That's their
Last
problem.
Now they've got yourself.
right.
Well, they only had one actually.
Application to fell trees was sold on June 6th. Everyone noted that?
Yeah.
Thank you. We've heard that Paul's already met with the tree people. Item 15, matters to report, any damage to purpose redundant signs in the town, access issues. Robin, you had.
And just to say that I've had correspondence with the erstwhile Taylor Wimpy, who, after having a contractor, because I think even Margaret or somebody was involved, that they were going to put in the slope where they, take away the 2 steps to get a slope in there for disability access. They then come back and
On
said,
Clarence Park.
Clarence Park.
Yeah.
I presume everyone knew who the developer was. But they've come back to say that they lost a contractor and they're now going out to get another contractor to replace the 2 steps. But there is light at the tunnel because at least they've admitted that they need to do something. So if you think when we discussed the application, we all pointed out that it was rather stupid to put steps at the end of the slope so that you couldn't use it. But our Vale District Council at the time considered that they knew that you could. You remember they were quite good at steps and slopes and finding that disabled people should use steps. When we defeated them on the Common End, all of us together, didn't we? So this is no case of what that baggage they left us to click at, but it appears that they're going to actually do it. It appears that they're progressing it. We'll know when it's done because someone will take a photograph of themselves. But what I would suggest is with this planning committee that when it actually is done, perhaps I suggest that Councillor Donoghue, the chairman and the mayor go down there and prove that you can actually get down there on the slope, official opening of the slope. Because I think we do need to show our victories because. Because I think it shows that the case
It's in progress.
is in progress. And one other thing on good news, in my discussions on the other slope, remember we won after 5 years getting the slope in. I've had it in correspondence now, which I've given the town clerk, that Buckinghamshire Council is going to adopt it. So that slope is going. Cotton End slope is going to be adopted. That's only taken us all this time, but we've succeeded. It just you have to keep banging on, relentless, and you can achieve stuff. So,
Robin, you mentioned the manhole cover.
oh yeah, I reported the manhole cover outside the secondary school. We do seem to have a proliferation around the town of loose manhole covers, which are waking people up at night. I actually parked there in the car.
It's in London Road.
Yeah, I've reported it, but if anybody else finds any, please to report them because people can't sleep at night.
I
And
reported that
They fixed the one on Stratford Road.
right when I went round and did the
Chaos in sea.
generator thing.
yeah, the poor man just can't sleep
I
at night.
came down and I thought, no, that's awful. And I've reported it and I've reported it again. And apparently it's a utility one, which means TFP can't deal with it. Get in touch with the utility to do it themselves. It's a manhole.
Who's free tomorrow afternoon? I know how to solve it.
Right. Councillor Fry.
The road sign, who looks after it from the non-used Lace Hill roundabout to Forton Road roundabout on a tilt. Just before that, on the left-hand side, there's a town centre and hospital, I think, is on it, and it's obscured by foliage and got green gunge on it. Do we clean them or do we look after those?
I'll think it tomorrow because he's already put an application in to clear branches from round the street lamp on Foster Way.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Road anyway, and it goes usually red line halfway up the road, the path into Lace Hill. I'm just saying it ought to be a shorter time between press and button. It should be almost immediate. I'm not saying there's no reason why it shouldn't be almost immediate. For a change.
Catherine's noted that. Thank you very much.
Where are we going out right now, Paul?
Well, it's a good question. I was waiting for the development to finish up there, but I didn't really
We're
want to
going out riding.
take horses past
Thank you.
cranes.
Right, Chairman's items for information, I'll just have one. Catherine's had notice today from David Rowley about this section 106 parking contribution from Lace Hill. You will recall that we suggested that we perhaps install EV charging points to the Buckingham Athletic Football Club car park because we've got £18,000 in hand. He's come back, said it would need the agreement of the party who made the contribution. However, early estimates indicate a budget in excess of £40,000 will be needed for this project. So we may have to have a rethink on that. He has warned us contribution would have to be returned to the developer at the expiry of 10 years, which is February 2023. Karen.
I'm just astonished that one electric charging point should cost 40,000.
Well, it's not one, we suggest.
I have to say that reading what Mr. Rowley's put, nobody's given any actual report. I think this is an estimated figure that somebody said, oh, it'll cost 40,000 quid, we haven't got it. I think it's probably not.
We can't deal with this tonight. It's going to be put on the June agenda. So in the meantime, would people like to think about what we might be able to spend that £18,000 on? Half which we don't pursue that.
Don't we get a line around the town hall?
Yeah, we can discuss this in June. Just tonight. So it could be, if there's nothing else, ladies and gentlemen. Date to the next meeting, Monday, 6th of June at 7 PM. Thank you very much for attending tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, well done.
Just a point of information, now we're out of meeting.
Right.
I wasn't going to say it in the meeting, but we did agree, we were going to do a press release about the trees, and I joked about that if we don't do it, we'll be halfway through the year, and actually it will soon be the shortest, longest day. So my prediction that we wouldn't do anything in February now been proved completely right. When we drew a motion which was delayed for the new year.
It's not
proposal
though, is it?
that we would do something about the year of the tree. Now, we're all the way through to 6 months through the year. So can we do it probably half the year? Because we're still going to have to.
I have actually flown
We're still going to have to point.
And I hate it every now because it's got so many levers and it wants to crash all the time.
Yes.
The thing is not built to fly actually.
The pilot said to me, when you've established all your feet and you're up and down and everything else,
And the one is
just remember where that is. If you ever want to go that way again, that's where you've got to put everything. We were over the Scottish Western Isle.
Yeah, so I am still like, didn't think I picked up something. Maybe I do then.
I've been on those.
Have you eaten?
That is.
I have.
Oh, good.
I haven't had enough chocolate.
Oh, is this it? Sorry. Oh, right. Yeah.
John,
But he's not happy with you.
I couldn't care less. I mean, I told a man to shut up and don't interrupt me.
Well, I'm not happy with you. You want a bloody post box out of me.
Yeah.
I've just been miserable, Mark.
God.